Welcome to Chapter 3, Rembrandt, Influences and Connections. A Correggio story by myself, Daniel Dawson-Gordon. This is a really important chapter now we're on, and we've been leading towards. We discuss the influences of Correggio's works within Rembrandt's works. And this is not at all recorded anywhere. There might be brief nods towards Italian artists that he used, but there's no conclusive write-up about this, and I don't think the awareness has been there. And we're about to reveal one of the greatest discoveries in all of art history. My Cupid has been a domino effect, a ripple in the water through so many paintings. Because of its incredible importance to art history, it will always be involved with many paintings. And the greatest artists in history, if you pick and choose any one of them, just like Rembrandt, you will find that their work has truly been influenced by Antonio Allegri di Correggio. And that shows the importance of Correggio and how the magic of the work has stood out and shone so brightly. It's nothing but incredible. So I'll explain my findings now, and we'll go into it, and I'm pretty sure this is going to blow your mind. We will go and work our way through, as we've done through the various chapters in stages, but I will tell you now that we're going to lead to an ultimate reveal in this chapter, and that reveal will involve the full understanding of Rembrandt's The Night Watch. The Night Watch has got over 30 different suggestions and ideas of what's going on. Some people that may not be familiar may think that that's a conclusively understood painting. Like many paintings presently, scholars don't really understand what's going on, and it's still a mystery. But we're here to reveal that mystery, and I'm really proud to have discovered it and understood it, and it was the only way it possibly could have been done, is to have this broad understanding of all these journeys of the mythological works, and to have the memory that I have of the visualization of these images. But let's proceed, and we're going to start off with a few of Rembrandt's works, to eventually moving into his group portraits, to eventually landed on The Night Watch. So as we start off, we will look at particular works that he'd done that I feel were influenced by certain works by Correggio, and we're going to work our way along and build ourselves up to this great reveal. So what we'll do, we'll start off with a painting that first caught my eye, and this is an incredible painting by Rembrandt called Minerva. And this now belongs in the famous Leiden collection. So when I looked at this painting, I could see facial recognition of the Venus School of Love by Correggio instantly. And it was Richard Cooper's drawing that shows her with a broader face. And I believe this is certainly, after Correggio's School of Love, the variant version that would have been in Prague. And I'll show you why. If we do a little comparison of the National Gallery School of Love here, we've got the Bruckenthal version, which I believe could possibly be the original Correggio version, where her genitalia is covered and you see her broader face. As with the Richard Cooper drawing, her genitalia covered and a broader face. And then over here we see the Minerva, and then we think, well, where are the close comparisons? Because remember, these paintings are not copies, they are influences, they're creations that have been influenced by particular paintings. And this painting is truly influenced by the School of Love, and I'll show you why. Really interesting details. Here we can see the side-by-sides of the heads. We can see that the first small detail is all the leaves and details behind her hair has now become a headdress. But how about this to attract your attention? Look at the hand position of Minerva, and look at the hand position of Venus. Now we need to think, where would little Cupid be? Why is he not in the picture? So if you look at Cupid's wings, as we've looked previously, if you look at the colour of the gold and the blue, then we zoom in to her blouse, it's as if Cupid's blue and gold feathers are tucked into her blouse, just under her shawl or cape as it were. There is evidence of this matching colours of Cupid's wings, the blue and the yellowy gold blended together. So we've got a match for the hands, then we've got a match for Cupid's wings. But then let's look at the whole picture here. To the right of Venus in the School of Love, you've got this big stone. Well, to the right of Minerva in Replacement, you've got this large shield. Proportionally, it's very similar. And then below the rock in the Venus, you've got the helmet of, or the hat of Mercury. But just below the shield, you've got the hat and helmet here of Minerva. So we're not looking at a copy, we're looking at a painting that's completely been influenced by Correggio's School of Love. So if we look at these few factors that created this awareness with myself, I could see that this head was after Correggio's Venus. I could see the hand was used from the Venus painting. I can see Cupid's feathers tied in her little dress there. I can see Mercury's hat, and the rock formation was used where the shield was. And we mustn't forget that one of the main parts of this painting by Correggio is, this is known as the Education of Cupid. And he has a book that he's reading. But just in the same position, just below Minerva's helmet, is a large book. And this painting triggered something in me. And I then began to investigate Rembrandt's works much deeper. So I found this painting, Susan and the Elders, which was believed to have been completed in 1647, which is actually held in the Gemälde Gallery in Berlin. And I looked at this painting and I realised that these characters are all impositions and painted after figures in Correggio's Leda and the Swan. So here we can see Leda by Correggio has some similar positions going on to Susanna. And the elders in the background, this one here, looks very much like the position of the maid behind Leda. And this other elder here is in a very similar position and look and angle, composition, as this other version of Leda. So I thought to myself, there must be a swan in this painting. And I kid you not, this is the stages I went through. I'm not too familiar with this work, and I was looking, where is the swan? Where is the swan? So then I researched looking for this swan, and Google gave me a lead. It showed that Sir Joshua Reynolds, that once owned this painting, had made many adjustments to the work and hid up the swan. So the swan was overpainted. So I had a feeling instinctively that a swan belongs in this picture, even though this has never been a Leda and a Swan painting. This is Susanna and the Elders. So I already had the inkling to feel that the swan was there. And then I discovered through X-ray and research in 2015, they discovered there was originally a swan in his painting, and that the original drawings showed this with a swan. So for me to have that prediction makes it all true, that this would have been a Leda and the Swan painting and was clearly after Correggio's Leda and the Swan. Leda has been used again in the painting Bathsheba, and if we look, that the centre figure is in position of Leda. It's most likely that the robe in her central is representing the swan, but if we look at the character behind her holding up her hair, is just like the character holding the robe in the Leda. This other figure on the bottom below is very much like the figure to the left of Leda in the hand positions with a side profile. But let's just keep going, because we're gonna stumble across quite a few of these to build a large case. We can see that Rembrandt done a painting of Ganymede, and if we look at Rembrandt's original drawing, you can see that it even has a figure below, just like Correggio's Ganymede has the dog below. So Correggio's Ganymede has the bird above and the boy, and has the dog below, so it's a three-figure composition, and Correggio's work was a three-figure composition originally. Ganymede is quite familiar to our Cupid. The feet and the cheeky bum is quite familiar. So we're looking at Rembrandt's mythological works are very much familiar to Correggio's mythological works. So let's step over and look at some of his drawings. And I found this drawing of Jupiter and Antiope by Rembrandt, which was one of his etchings, and it is a direct match to the Venus Satyr Cupid. Venus, she has a hand over her head, the nose, the protruding nose, that is 100% certainly inspired by Correggio's work. But that would have been from the variant version, which was my version. And if you look, the satire that he's put into the composition is not side profile. He's got both eyes. So that shows that that was the variant version. The inscription has been noted as 1659, which I've researched that inscription, and that I think that's a mistake by scholars, and that is 1639. That is a 3 and not a 5. I think that is a mistake, and I found many 3s by Rembrandt that match that 3, which is being called a 5. That is 1639, I believe, and 1659 would be a mistake, especially that that painting had been stolen by Christina by then. All these other works surrounding mythological were prior to this date. So, new update for Rembrandt's history. That's, I believe, most certainly 39, not 59. And so here we can start to really see that, hold on a minute, this is only from Correggio's work, this drawing, this etching, is only from that work. And if you look at the side by sides with the satire, with our satire that we use, the William van Heck picture, because that is a true life picture of the full composition before it was destroyed. And we can see that even in Van Heck's version, Venus's nose is a little bit more pointier, I believe, than the Louvre version. We can see some more drawings by Rembrandt of a figure, female laying down. It's quite similar to the Venus, could have been inspired or got a real life study to get in that position. Now if we look at another work by Rembrandt, Mythological, which is very interesting, they all are interesting, but this has got so many sort of angles here, this is known as Rembrandt's Danae painting. So let's find the influences and connections in this work. And we can see that it's a Danae painting, but Rembrandt was heavily influenced by the Leader painting too. That was one of his favourite paintings because he used it so often throughout his works as an influence. So here we've got the Rembrandt painting, and we have the Correggio Leader, and here we're using the engraving of Danae, because I believe that shows the original Danae painting as opposed to the Borghese version, which I believe is a copy, and was originally bought and purchased and imported to the Borghese as a copy. If this painting is after Leader and the Swan, where would the swan be? Now look at this bed drapery, how it has the line of beauty, as Hogarth would say, and it turns and twists just like the position of the swan, Leader and the Swan. And then next to Leader, the maid with the side profile that again we see in Suzanne and the Elders. This figure matches that in the Leader, but I believe the face of Danae was influenced and used from Correggio's Danae, and I believe the above golden shower, as it were, as Danae, and it's like a golden Cupid, is after another figure in the leader and the swan. So I believe this work is a creation built from Leader and Danae of Correggio. It's built up of both works. We go to another one. Here we have Rembrandt's A Woman Bathing in a Stream. Now, I believe that this woman is modelled after Leader, but the Leader on the right when she's been courted by the swan. And if you look closely, the facial width and look and angle, and how she's standing in the water looking down as if she may be looking down at the swan. Maybe the swan is under that picture in an X-ray. Maybe the swan was originally in there. This lady, I believe, is certainly after Correggio's Leader. I hope you can join me with that. We're building a very strong case now to Rembrandt's works after Correggio. Another Bathsheba work by Rembrandt, and again completely influenced by Correggio's Leader and the Swan, and we can see that again the orientation of the sheet is in the swan slalom position, and if you put her side by side against Leader, you can see even with her left hand outstretched and her right hand, she's very familiar to the Leader and the Swan. And again, the next close figure in the Leader and the Swan with the side profile, the maid looking down, is just like this maid looking down to Bathsheba. So we have another painting all in this spectrum of Correggio works influenced. So we're looking at Rembrandt's mythological works and that they were inspired by Correggio's mythological works. But it doesn't stop there, not even at the slightest. We can look at portraits that Rembrandt done that is not known to this day who these people were. You read in some books they are unknown, some books make suggestions, and what Rembrandt did was use Correggio's mythological works and make portraits of these characters as real people, and I'll show you. So this portrait we have, which is still unknown, and there is ideas, there is suggestions by scholars, and it still could be of a real life lady, but it's certainly influenced by a Correggio character. And I think the description of this is known as a woman with a pink flower. And as you can see, she has a frame behind her, and just like Correggio's Danae, there is a framed window to the left, and here we have a framed picture to the left. But if we look side by side of her face with Danae's face, you can see that it's the correct position, look and style of Correggio's Danae. So then if we look now at another portrait that Rembrandt did that closely resembles the Psyche in the Danae painting, and if we put them opposite each other, you can see that we have clearly the Danae and Psyche composition. Look how the arms outstretched on this portrait of this female figure, and even more so, there is a preliminary drawing idea sketch of this portrait of this lady, and if you look at that first, that has all the hair movement of this Psyche, and it matches the Psyche. So we have the drawing that's inspired from this winged figure in the Correggio painting, and this drawing that's evolved into this portrait, and this, her hand position, her look, these characters have been created from influences from Correggio's work. And one of my favourites, which I really do like and shines straight out to me, is this portrait of a lady holding an ostrich feather by Rembrandt. And although yes, it looks very much familiar to a ostrich feather, it also is very familiar to a swan's feather. And this figure with these pale tones and broad forehead, side looking, this painting is Correggio's Leader. as a lady, and this figure is created from Correggio's Leader and the Swan. It's a fantastic painting by Rembrandt, and if we look at its counterpart painting, Portrait of a Gentleman with a Tall Hat, we can see that Rembrandt has clearly based this painting on a figure which is left of Leader, who's playing the harp in Correggio's Leader and the Swan. Just as the figure is looking directly at you, so is Rembrandt's portrait, with a similar hand position. And again, this figure in Correggio's work, along with the famous Leader, is depicted throughout history by many artists and in many paintings. And it's all to do with a true admiration of Correggio, and the masters that knew all did this. Now again, I tease you enough with Rembrandt's Night Watch, but we're going on to a new stage now, which is just as important and fits into the same area as that painting, and that is Rembrandt's group portraits. This is where it begins to get exciting. So in 1632, Rembrandt painted this anatomy of Dr. Nikolai Tulp, and we can see the date because it's dated in the background, and all the books have been correct in what they're saying about this picture, that these aren't real people, these are fictional, and that it's funny how they've been so close to discovering the truth that I have found, but they haven't crossed the line, they haven't worked it out. So Rembrandt has used a collection of the famous Correggio works within this painting. As in the Leader and the Swan, bottom right hand corner, as usually always placed, is the Leader being courted by the Swan. So this chap with his hands up in the same position as we see in so many paintings, this is Leader. Below, where is the Swan? Well, if you look at the muscular stripped hand with all the skin removed, there's a very peculiar look to these hands, how they're flared up. And what you see here is the cryptic message of this is the Swan. So these are feathers and the wing of the Swan. So this hand represents the Swan courting Leader. So to the left we have the main Leader in the centre of the picture with the bright forehead, slightly inclined head, and where we can see the Swan, well, it's partly incorporated with the neck ruff and the beard, but then above him you have the other Leader, which is when the Leader has done the business and is flying away, and this Swan is represented with this moustache. Now who else do we have in this picture? In the far left of the Leader and the Swan, an iconic figure that we see again and again, you have the Psyche with the harp who's looking straight directly at you, just like this figure in this right side of the painting. Even the drawing on a piece of paper indicates the position of this fella. But it's not just the Leader, it's the other famous works. And we can see right next to the Leader, in the centre of the picture, is another man peering down. And this man peering down is our Satyr. Our Satyr with both eyes on show. And who is below our Satyr in our Venus Satyr Cupid composition? Well, Venus, of course. And who is below this guy peering over? Well, the dead body shows Venus, with a pointy inclined nose, eyes drawn back, even sort of the chest has a sort of resemblance of a female breast. But this below is Venus, and this is Satyr. So directly above our Venus asleep, at the top of the picture, is the Venus from the School of Love. So that man is looking directly at us, so as Venus in the School of Love in the Brook and Fold painting. Below, on the left, we have a lovely side profile Cupid, which is a match for this old chap in the left. So we've covered everybody but this last person, who is next to the Cupid. And this face represents undeniably Danae. So here you can see the side by side with Danae. The golden shower of coins are represented here in this figure's arm. And this whole composition has the Danae, the Leader, and the two Venuses. the 4 of the most important paintings. Overall, I've conclusively worked out this picture by Rembrandt, The Anatomy of Dr. Nikolai Tulp. There's more. Of course there's more. There's loads more. We cannot forget this painting. It would have been a very large, incredible work, just like that previous painting that I just showed you of The Anatomy, and just like Night Watch. But this was destroyed in a fire, and we can look through original drawings at how large a picture and many figures would have been in this work. But again, this painting is after Correggio's Leda and the Swan. If you look at it, it sounds so far-fetched, but the reality is there because it's consistent. So if you see the brains being revealed of this figure being dissected, the ripples of the brain, this is representing Leda's hair. This is Leda. And then the figure next to the man being dissected represents the maid next to Leda. So we have these two figures in the central picture of Correggio's Leda and the Swan are these two central figures in this famous painting by Rembrandt. And this painting does include the swan, because I believe again that what we can see is the blanket represents the swan. We move on now to an incredibly famous work, which is the Syndicate of Drapers by Rembrandt, and these figures are no different to all the other paintings. It's a set system that's done throughout history, through all artists and in Rembrandt's works. And what we have is the Leda and the Swan translated into these men. It's a cryptic reimagination of the Leda and the Swan. So the bottom right hand corner, we have the Leda, eyes in the same position, hand, and the width of the face, the wide-bodied face. And this person, where is the swan depicted? So the gloves in hand depict the swan. So to the left of this figure, we have the other Leda. And this is the Leda who is the last of the sequence, where the swan has done his business and is flying away. But where do we see the swan? Well, below, the book represents the swan. And here we see a book in the wave motion of the wing of a swan. So then to the left of that figure, we have Leda herself with the largest shining face of all, centre of the picture, and maybe it's the neck collar representing the wings of the swan here with the hanging tassels. But this person with a slightly inclined face is our shining Leda. Above to the right, we have this face, which is the maid above the Leda, which is the last in the representation where the swan flies away. So this is the maid in the top. Then to the left is the maid who is right next to the Leda with a slightly inclined, almost semi-side profile look, but you can see both eyes. And then our really famous person that we always see on the left side of any picture, looking straight at us directly, is the little Psyche on the far left of the Leda painting. So it's funny how we always have on the far left this person, on the far right the other, in the centre the main Leda. An incredibly famous painting, once again we are changing history of. I'm so confused why no one has seen it before, but it's because nobody has studied the Correggio works as in depth as I have. Now we land on a colossal discovery. Something that I've been wanting to share with the world for a long time now. I've been keeping it to myself and it's been sending me round the bend because it is the most famous painting currently in the world at the moment. He's famous, he's as famous as you like. And his greatest work is The Night Watch. But like these other great works, why were they so great? Because they were influenced by the master Antonio Allegri da Correggio and his works. So you know the concept, you know how we look at these works. We have the mythological works by Correggio, the 6 chief paintings. We've got the School of Love, we've got the Venus Satyr Cupid, we've got the Danae painting, we have the Leda painting, we have the Io, and we have the Ganymede. So let's look at the Night Watch. Painted in 1642, it was believed to have been commissioned by a captain of a civil militia guards, and the painting, as a lot of these historical paintings, is not in its original condition. It had been trimmed on both sides, and on the left side we have lost 3 figures, and we know what these figures are because there's an early copy of this painting in the National Gallery in London. So we're not without them. And the shield in the background that lists the names of all these militant figures, when you x-ray this painting, it shows that that whole area didn't originally include the shield, and maybe the shield was painted at a later date, shortly after, but a later date. And also the copy of this painting, the earliest copy in the National Gallery London, doesn't include the shield. There is even a documentary movie made that includes 30 different suggestions of what could be going on in this painting. Scholars have come up with different ideas, and sometimes the ideas become the narrative and become the what it is and what it was. But you have to dig through history and work out that a lot of times this is suggestions. And with all the side-by-side influences and comparisons that I've showed you to build up to this, this is the best one, the easiest one. This is black and white, and I've allocated it all the way through, figure for figure, detail for detail. So we now finally begin to uncover Rembrandt's The Night Watch. And we'll start off with the central figures in the picture. So we've got this lieutenant and this other figure with the feathers in his hat. Now what we start with here is the School of Love. That central figure we have, this figure represents the Venus. So as we look at his neck ruff, if we turn it to the side, that is the Venus's wing. We again look at his broad face, it's just like the Venus. But what we're going to see throughout this composition, 10 out of 10, is that the positions of the characters' feet is the same positions as the Correggio characters, but from alternative perspectives. So if we look at Venus's feet, the left foot is pushed forward and the right foot is slightly back. That is the same as this lieutenant. And if we look at the shawl across him, I believe this would have been the shawl that the blanket covering Venus's genitalia. The figure next to the lieutenant is on side profile, just like little Cupid. But if you look at the feathers on this figure's hat, they are a direct match for the positioning of Cupid's wings. So if we turn Cupid's wings and overlay them, they are a match. So here we can see the colour match of Cupid's wings. The blue, yellow and gold, with the beads around this figure's hat, around his chest, and also down to his spear, you see the same colours. So then let's look at the feet. So if you look at his feet again, just as little Cupid's feet, his right foot is pushing forward and his left foot is slightly back and inclined. So we have the side profile, we have the wings match, and we have the feet matching. So here we're going, in the central picture is a Venus, Cupid and Mercury, as in the School of Love. So then we think, where is Mercury? We move along, exactly in the position he should be in. He's looking in the same angle. We have Mercury. And this fella is looking down, just like Mercury would be looking down at his son Cupid. If we look down at his feet, we can see that the positions of the feet, the right foot coming forward and the left foot slightly back, inclined, is exactly the same as Correggio's Mercury. So looking here, the Mercury also has his hat on and this guy has his helmet on, is very much representing the Mercury. So they are defining parts. So we'll go across the painting now to the right side and we will see the Danae painting. And this fella with the drum has his head inclined and is in the same mood and look and view as Danae. We have the Psyche with his outstretched arm, just like this figure in this right side of the painting. We have the two little Cupids, which are these two figures, one side looking, one looking across. He's even holding his gun, just like this little Cupid is holding his arrow. I can even see familiar detail in the drum, which matches the bed of Danae. This golden cloud-shaped object represents the cloud in Danae. The golden shower of coins that land in the lap of Danae are represented here in this figure's arm. We can even see above this area, very high up in the picture, is a representation of a window. It's funny how that is in the area of Danae. So again, we'll look through. Here is the Danae matching this guy. On the right side of the picture, we have the Psyche, we have the Danae's feet are still in the position. The right foot is further up higher than the left foot. We have the two Cupids here. It's one side profile, one looking forward. Now we bounce back to the central part of the painting again, and we're looking at the centre, but slightly above the first figures that we worked with, which was the School of Love. This figure is portrayed from Zeus in the Io painting, who is a cloud. So his face is distorted, not because of the perspective, because you have figures further back in the painting which have great enhanced detail and are not blurry. This guy is blurry because he's the cloud. And below his face is this other figure who represents Io. And Io has a hand outstretched, and this chap has his hand outstretched. But then as we compare these two figures with the Io painting, we look down, and what does Io have? She is embraced by the cloud, by a hand. But then as we look down the composition, and there is the hand that we were predicting to see, and we find. And that hand is a match for the hand within the cloud in Correggio's Io, which would have been the variant Io at the time. So then we've got the Zeus, or Jupiter, we've got Io, we've got Io's outstretched hand, we've got Zeus's hand embracing, but what other two key features do we have in Correggio's Io painting? We have the large pot, we have the deer. So let's look, where is this pot? So if we go down this figure, which we know as Cupid, if you look at his bottom right boot, it's different from his left boot, and it's rolled back. And it has a rim rolled back, just like the Io's pot. So if there's the pot, where is the deer drinking the water? Now if we look into this figure's embroidery in his dress, close up, there is the deer. And scholars have known this deer is in here. They say it's a similar emblem to one of the militar factions that they believe it is. And they question it's very different, but it is, they say it's the emblem. When in fact, if you turn him around, if you see, the deer is drinking from a stream, he's drinking water. So here we have the Io in the Night Watch. So we've discovered the School of Love, we've discovered the Danae, and now we have discovered the Io. So let's go to Io's counterpart, the Ganymede. This one is very, very clear. So if we go back to the right side of the painting, next to Danae, and we look, we can see there is a dog below, just as the Ganymede was. If we see this figure here with the big feathers on his hat, looking directly at us like Ganymede was, with his head inclined on an angle, this is Ganymede. Now, if we look, he's holding this pole, and this pole with another pole crossing through represents a fork. And if you look at the dog in the Ganymede, to the left of it is a tree that is forked. Now if you look above the dog in the Rembrandt Night Watch, in this section, the pole represents the tree and it forks off just like the tree. So where is the eagle? It's quite cheeky, the eagle, in this one, because he is a bit cheeky in himself, what he's up to. But if you look to the right of what represents Ganymede, just in the back there, you can see there is the eagle, which is in the painting of the Night Watch, is most likely a helmet with a stud, but that is the eye of the eagle, and the eagle just there in the background. So we have 4 out of 4 matches for Ganymede: the dog, the Ganymede, the eagle and the tree. I find this section a really, really black and white case for my discovery. Now, as we have learned throughout this process, Rembrandt was infatuated with the leader painting, and the leader painting is of course in the Night Watch. If we go to the left side of the Night Watch, and what we will have to do here is add the original figures back to the painting, and we use the figures in the early copy from the National Gallery to show you where they were and how they would have looked. These are the 3 figures. You may be familiar with them already, but I'll show you who they are. So if we start off with Leader, this central figure represents Leader. Leader has directly below her a swan, but this figure, you look down and you think, where is the swan? So here we have a large rifle, and the swan has this large, long neck. So what I did was I looked at this rifle to find the swan. So I follow the rifle's barrel down to the shaft, and then there it is. This lady here, hanging off her, has maybe a chicken, but this bird represents the swan. So this figure has the swan below here. But if you look at the body of the swan in Leader of the Swan above, who is above the swan to the right of Leader is the leader's maid. And in the same position above the swan in Correggio's Leader is this maid. Above this swan we have this figure that matches the maid, but she has a gold sheet there that she has in front of her, and this gold sheet may be why that this figure has been influenced to be painted in gold clothing. If you look at the figure in the Night Watch that represents the leader, his feet, they are in the same positions as Leader's feet positions. But let's look across the painting of Correggio's Leader and match more figures up. So let's see a prominent figure, the Psyche, to the left of Leader, which is holding a pointy harp, and this figure in the Night Watch has the same look to Psyche and is holding a pointy axe. I attribute this Night Watch figure to the Leader Psyche figure. If we go to the right of Leader, and we have the maid that holds the dress, I attribute this figure here in the looking to the right, just like the Correggio picture. But the one that really gets me in this, and this is, you're gonna like this. Leader in the Correggio Leader is depicted 3 times. One where the swan is courting her, one where the swan is seducing her, and one where the job has been done and the swan flies away and she's looking up after, and she doesn't look sad, she looks quite happy of what's happened. So this version of Leader
looking up is this chap here looking up, and he has his arm outstretched as leader has a arm matching. Where is the swan flying off? You cannot mistake it. If you look at his neck ruff and collar, that represents the wings. And if you look at the feet of the swan, they are the tassels. So the two tassels are the feet of the swan and the wings are the neck ruff. And so where would slightly below this swan would be the other swan in the composition? Well, I believe that if we look back at just slightly to the right, at the Zeus, this neck collar is representing the other swan. So in Correggio's Leader and the Swan, there is 3 representations of the swan. And in Rembrandt's Night Watch, we have allocated and discovered the 3 representations of the swan. We have the main central swan, which is with leader at the bottom of the barrel of the gun, just below the maid. We have the flight of the swan, which is on the neck ruff of the leader, and we have the swan that's doing the courting just below the Jupiter, Zeus, cloudy face on the neck ruff. So we now have 2 figures left in Correggio's Leader and the Swan to complete the leader composition into Correggio's Night Watch. Where would they have been? Well, if you didn't know that the painting was cut down, you'd never find them. But if we look at these 2 figures here, on the left of the painting, they represent these 2 little cherubs. One looking forward, just like this little cherub is, and one looking side profile with his arm to the right. This wide-faced person is depicted as this character here with the helmet on and the tassels. And if we look at his positioning is slightly above the neck ruff of the Io, Jupiter, Zeus neck ruff of the swan. So here we're placing this swan as the lower stream, courting this version of leader. And if we look in the Night Watch overall, we will see the 3 leaders in a row. The leader saying goodbye to the swan, the leader to the right being courted by the swan, and the leader below here with the gun is the act of the swan. So now we land on my true love, which is the Venus Satire Cupid by Correggio and his variant version that was Charles V's version, which is my painting, and what we have is the Cupid. So if we look central to the picture of the Night Watch, we can see the 2 chief paintings of Correggio's mythological works. We've already worked out that right in the centre, this is the School of Love's Venus. So where would the Venus Satire Cupid's Venus be in this picture? Directly above, in its correct position, because that was, I believe, and is recorded as one of his greatest mythological works. And this figure above is the Venus asleep, with the protruding nose looking up. So if we have the Venus, where is the satire? So slightly above, but to the right, we have the satire here, with his arms out, and instead of holding the blanket, he's holding a pole with spear, weapon. What is to the right of the satire, which I've used in all the chapters to differentiate my variant version from the Louvre version, and that is the forked tree. The forked tree that we've seen throughout all the influences through the 16th and 17th century of old masterworks. So we go to the right of my satire, there is the forked tree. Now if we look at this militant figure which depicts my satire, he has the side profile but is revealing both eyes. So it's not a complete side profile, it's an angled side profile. He's showing both eyes, and to the right, where is the forked tree? Well, here it is. We have the spears are cross-referencing across each other, and they depict again
a fork. So what is all of these chapters about? What is this discovery all about? What has enabled us to reveal the truth lost to art history? And it all comes down to my Cupid. My painting of Cupid by Correggio. So where is Cupid in this painting? If we look to the bottom left, here he is. He has his left leg outstretched backwards, rising up, with his right foot pushing forward. His face side profiled, but he's covered. And don't forget, this is an obscure influence that has not been recognised by anybody. So it's not going to be a direct copy. He secretly placed it with genius technique. So here is the Cupid, and all the signs of all these figures have always been there. Scholars have always said, why is this little boy in this picture? They don't know why. The questions have been brilliantly asked and queried, but they've never been worked out. And I've worked out who the little boy is. The little boy is Cupid. I've worked out who the figures are. They're the mythological works by Correggio. And why Rembrandt's work was so famous is because he used the best works in history to influence his works. So what other parts of the Venus satire Cupid have we used throughout the earlier influences? We've used the forked tree, we've used the satire, we've used the Venus, we've used the Cupid, but what about the lion's face, the lion's rug? So where would that be? Well, just next to the Cupid, in the extra part of the painting that was cut away, that we've replaced, this cheeky little, peculiar little face here, I believe allocates the lion's head in the rug. Next to the Cupid, in the same area as the Rembrandt's little boy, we have the boy in that face, which is the Cupid and the lion's rug. So we have completed the 6 mythologicals and we have 7 figures remaining. But who could these figures be? Well, I've worked it out. We wouldn't be here now if I hadn't worked it out. So there's a picture now lost to history, which is an absolute favourite of mine. And I don't believe it's been destroyed. I believe it's just lost and it's in a private collection somewhere. And I'm certain in my lifetime I will discover it. And it's very famous. It's called the Muleteers and it's by Correggio. It went missing a little time after the Orleans collection was disbanded. So this is so important now in positioning where these works were, because I'm about to show you that a work has been put into the Night Watch, which is not one of Correggio's mythological works, but it's a separate Correggio work that belonged to that collection of Correggio works in a particular private collection. So it allocates these works as being together, otherwise there would be random other Correggio works. It's a specific Correggio collection that would have been in Prague. And so if we look at, we can see through engravings, this is Correggio's Muleteers with a donkey carrying a load and these 2 figures. And they're quite significantly defined figures throughout. We can look at, we can't miss this particular look of donkey. It's got a muzzle that's quite specific and the particular plume on his headdress that plumes out. So we have a depiction through various drawings and particularly the Orleans drawing. So as we look at figures we haven't allocated yet, we have these 2 gentlemen. Let's look at these 2 male figures in the Muleteers and see how they match with these 2 gentlemen. Now if we look, one of them has a similar hat and the other guy is looking in an exact same profile and position as the chap in the Muleteers. They're quite a great match. There's even the man with this hat on the right, his ear is showing and we can see this guy's ear and beard. This is that character. So if we've got these 2 gentlemen in there, where is the donkey, the mule? If you see this chap here, his leg is outstretched like a mule or donkey strolling along. We look at the
helmet, it has the floral details as above the donkey. It has points as if the 2 points of 2 ears of the donkey, but below the donkey's face on the muzzle has this cross-hatched design. And if we go down, we can see this cross-hatching design on this headless figure. If we look at the foot, the way the boot and shoe has been designed, it looks quite similarly hoof-like in its representation. This leaf detail on the top of the helmet, which would have been shows as leaves, is quite like the leaves in the background of the muleteers on the tree. So the two figures clearly show the muleteers. We have the mule himself.
And we are now left with 4 figures remaining.
And it's always been said that this figure in the background is Rembrandt himself. I believe this little figure in the background here is Rembrandt's daughter. This other figure in the background is Rembrandt's son.
And here on the far left, we have Rembrandt's other son. As with each one of these members of Rembrandt's family, including himself, they are smallest, obscure little depictions of faces, different from everybody else in the painting. So my conclusion is, Rembrandt is playing the game same as every other great master, depicting his favourite Correggio work within his own. He's incorporated himself and his family, all for you to see and enjoy in the Night Watch.